into Lower Manhattan. Take a look at this. That is the now deposed, ousted Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores aboard that helicopter, heading to that heliport. This is the kind of caravan process movement that we've been watching since really just right at the top of the show for the last 30 minutes then, as the leader and his wife are making their way to a federal courthouse in Manhattan to face a federal judge for the first time since the U.S. military operation that occurred in the early hours of Saturday morning in Caracas that then captured, detained, arrested, and now it has indicted the former Venezuelan leader and his wife, Celia Flores. Let's keep an eye on this as this helicopter is going to land, and then we will be seeing, obviously, we would assume that we will then see the former leader and his wife leaving this helicopter and then continuing to make their way to the federal courthouse, where we have people staked out all along the way to bring you this. We're now seeing Nicolas Maduro departing, coming out of that helicopter. We're going to see his wife probably depart right after that. He's going to be now getting into, we assume, getting into another vehicle and heading to the courthouse. Just remarkable to see this. It was just until the early morning hours of Saturday that this man and his wife were running a country of more than 30 million people. And then that dramatic and violent U.S. military operation taking place has now captured them and now making their way with their hands bound in those tan jumpsuits to be facing a federal judge. Let's go to that federal courthouse where Maduro is going to be heading right now. Omar Jimenez is standing by, watching this along with us. Omar, it's a pretty remarkable thing to see as he's making his way towards where you are right now.
My friends, how are we doing today? Appreciate everybody being here. We just went live, so hopefully everything is going good on your end. Hello to everyone on YouTube and on Twitch. Hello from the X platform. Good to see everybody. Thank you for being here. Amazing times we live in right now, right? Especially with Maduro being captured and basically snatched right out of Venezuela. I think it is absolutely fantastic. This is what we're going to talk about today, because there are some specific points that I frankly don't ever see covered on the so-called mainstream media. And we're gonna discuss a few of these things in depth today, particularly about exactly what went down, how it went down, and why I believe this is going to be an extremely important event in American history, and definitely as far as Trump's presidency is concerned. I have some information here showing some of the past actions that the American administrations have taken in past years. We have an article from the New York Post we're going to discuss, because I like the way they essentially transcribe a lot of the proceedings and exactly what was said between the judge and former President Maduro. And then finally, I got some points that I think is really going to highlight why this could really help out the world as a whole, not just the United States. So we'll see exactly how it goes. Also, I just put a link in the chat. If you would like to join the chat, simply click on that link and follow the instructions. And all you need is a smartphone, desktop, whatever you'd like to stream on. Feel free to do so. I want to tell everybody really quick, too, on the front end, my girlfriend is Venezuelan, and I, despite what you hear on CNN, MSNBC, some of these other programs, I'm telling you, the Venezuelan people are ecstatic, absolutely ecstatic, that this regime is apparently on its way down, and that we were able to get the president of Venezuela and his wife and brought into custody, and no American lives have been lost to my knowledge. It's just a remarkable demonstration of the abilities that the Americans possess, that as America, we are definitely the strongest, most powerful military that God ever put on the face of the earth. And thank God for that and all of our many blessings. My girlfriend's reaction was real simple. I believe it was Saturday morning when I told her about it. She broke down in tears. Another friend of the family, she is Venezuelan American, and she had a similar reaction. She was just full of joy all day long. So good times and good news. Here we go, Rosemary. Thank you for being here today. It's always a pleasure to have you in our chat. All right, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into my comments. For y'all that are new to the program, welcome. I am J.R. Dukes. I am your host. This is the home of the free-minded patriot. This is where the woke choke, the truth prevails, and the battle for your freedoms is fought and won. You can always find me right here on YouTube or the X platform at the intersection of justice and transparency, or just remember at J.R. Dukes. My website is jrdukes.com. It'll take you to anything and everything you wish to go to. So let's go ahead and get right into it. I want to say something from the start, right off the bat here. The media is absolutely terrified to admit the following, and that is America is done playing defense. America is finished being weak. America has been reawakened via President Trump and the bold, courageous decisions he has been making. For years, even decades, we were told that we had to tolerate the chaos in our own hemisphere, in our own backyard, and that we had to understand these failed states, these dictators, these, let's call it an excuse for dictators, we were always told, look, we have to be polite. We have to look the other way. Meanwhile, we have all these hostile regimes turning their countries right in our backyard into launching pads for crime, drugs, terrorism, and our foreign adversaries. And thanks to President Donald Trump, that era is finally over, and amen to that. Because what we're seeing right now in Venezuela, right this second, is just America at its best. It's not just another foreign policy headline. This is a historic reset. It is the United States saying very clearly, you do not get to operate against America from America's neighborhood, period. This goes back to something we're going to talk about in a minute called the Truman Doctrine. I believe that's from around 1823. Right now, this is Donald Trump's world, and the rest of the world is adjusting. So let me be crystal clear. Venezuela isn't somewhere else. Venezuela is our problem, because when a nation collapses in our own hemisphere, America pays the price. We pay at the gas pump. We pay at the grocery store. We pay at the border. We pay when criminals and traffickers exploit and cause chaos. And they flood our communities. They flood our communities with illegals, the people from their prisons. It is just astonishing, truly astonishing. And it's really hard to comprehend how America's leadership has allowed this to fester for so long. Really, this goes all the way back to the 1960s under the JFK administration. And in my opinion, started in Cuba, of all places. We sometimes just lose our way, ladies and gentlemen. And I think we're finally turning the curve, turning the direction in a way we should go. We allowed a once prosperous, resource-rich country like Venezuela with a very strong tradition of democracy to be hijacked by an authoritative socialism. We allowed American oil contracts to be stolen. We had contracts for all of that oil, and it was simply nationalized, I believe, back in 1999 under Chavez. And we just swallowed it. We allowed it to happen. We allowed China, Russia, Iran, and even Hamas terror networks to use Venezuela as a staging ground, a place where they could actually launch terrorist attacks or even outright war attacks on our own country. We allowed Cuba, which of course goes all the way back to the Cold War, to survive decade after decade on subsidized oil and American weakness. This wasn't compassion. It wasn't diplomacy. It was negligence. This was American leadership negligence, period, full stop. And in my opinion, Donald Trump's actions now mark a moment that this negligence has finally ended. Because what this move represents, whether you love Donald Trump, whether you hate Donald Trump, or somewhere in between, is the return of consequence-based leadership, period. Remember this, peace does not come from speeches. It does not come from press releases. It comes from strong American leadership. It does not come from strongly worded statements. Remember Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe Biden, and his endless list of don'ts. Don't. It doesn't work, ladies and gentlemen. Peace comes when bad actors believe that America means what it says, and it actually does what it says it will do. And here's the part the media doesn't want to talk about. This makes America stronger. It makes America richer. It makes America safer. Trump's bold actions in Venezuela matter to the world, especially here in America. Energy, very important to the world, very important to our country. When the Western Hemisphere has some type of problem like this, America has to stand up and respond. We have to make sure, ladies and gentlemen, we keep leadership and we demonstrate leadership across the world. We must make sure we secure our borders. We must make sure that stable countries don't export chaos. It's failed states that do so. If Venezuela becomes functional again, fewer people are forced to basically come here to America. They're desperate, they're poor, they're broke, they're being prosecuted by their own government in Venezuela. And now all of this will start to subside. Talk about the dominoes falling in this particular manner. Well, guess what? Cuba has been hanging on by a thread for many, many years, kept alive by, let's just say, different lifelines like discounted oil from Venezuela. They've been getting oil directly from Venezuela. And now that that is going to be cut off, the math changes. Pressure builds and the reality sets in. For the Cuban people, something they haven't had in generations becomes possible again: freedom. Imagine that. Imagine if the dominoes all fall and they fall, even half of them fall the way I think they should fall. This is going to be great news, and it's going to go far beyond the benefits for America and Latin America. China, let's talk about China for a second. China has been siphoning discounted oil from our backyard, and that gravy train is now ending. I believe they were receiving a 30 to 40% discount by importing illegal Venezuelan oil. Now there's going to be higher costs for China. They're going to have less money to cause problems and to go on military ventures and to basically cause a war in Taiwan, a country that they have no claim to whatsoever. We'll talk about that at a later time in a later video, but it just makes war, it makes other problems in the world that much more unlikely. I mean, it just comes with a whole list of benefits because President Trump pulled this one single event, and it's going to save America blood, America treasure, and all of that without costing one American military life, period. And make no mistake, our friends over in Russia, they see this. Iran sees this. Every bad actor watching understands something important, and that is that America is no longer afraid to act. Now, look, President Trump's actions aren't radical. They are deeply rooted in an American tradition going all the way back to the 1800s under President Monroe, aka the Monroe Doctrine. And we're going to take a further look at that here in just a second. But I'll say this plainly because I frankly don't care what anybody thinks, and neither should you. We don't need to call this the Monroe Doctrine anymore. That's basically something in the history books, right? Right now, what we're witnessing is a new doctrine, and I am happy to call it the Trump Doctrine. Trump Doctrine simply says the Western Hemisphere is not enemy territory. Period. Stay out of here. It's our backyard. Hostile powers do not get platforms in our backyard, and that America will act decisively to protect its interests. And we prevent wars by keeping America strong. I mean, it's just common sense. Ronald Reagan also shared this philosophy. Some presidents, some strong presidents understand this, and Donald Trump definitely understands this. It's not empire building, no matter what the woke Democrats keep trying to tell us. This is about self-preservation. This is MAGA. This is making America great again. This is America finally accepting its God-given responsibility to pursue strength in the world, and that will lead us to peace. I mean, look, God has blessed our country and blessed us richly. Never has there been a richer country than America. Never has there been a stronger country than America is right now. It's really just that simple. And for far too long, weakness was sold as a view. I can't get the word out. A virtue, and we have to stop that. We have to call it what it is. Caution is not wisdom. Isolationism is not the gospel. That's not what we should be doing. And now Donald Trump's actions make this time in our history feel completely different. Remember this. There's that old expression, I think it's back from some of the movies on TV, and basically with great power comes great responsibility. And now President Donald Trump has showed us that responsibility. He showed us the way forward. And my friends, my opinion, we're just getting started. Amen to that, right? So let's go ahead and we're going to turn the page and get into the next example of what I've been talking about as far as actions that America has taken. This is not a new concept here in America. And by the way, Moses, thank you for being here. Moses call Washington, Pennsylvania. It's nice to have you. Thank you for being here. All right. Briefly, let's take a quick peek at this. Let me blow this up so I can see a little bigger. This is just some of the actions that America has been involved with strong presidents that took decisive action over history for one reason or another. It goes all the way back in Cuba, 1898. We had the Spanish-American War. U.S. invaded Cuba to end Spanish rule. At one time, believe it or not, Cuba was a territory of the United States, and we gave it back to Cuba. I'm not going to read through each one of these, but you can see 1906, 1912, 1961, and of course, 1962, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. Very scary times in our country, but we succeeded. Russia blinked. America exercising its power, its strength works. And other countries take notice when America has the proper leadership and we exhibit strength. It's really that simple. Same thing in the Dominican Republic, in Haiti. We've been there many times. Some of you probably remember us being there in 1994 under Operation Uphold Democracy. I remember that clearly. Even in Nicaragua, we had President Reagan in there in the 1980s in the Contra War. And in Panama, 1903 and 1989, remember 1989, Operation Just Cause. That was under President George H.W. Bush, full-scale invasion to oust dictator Manuel Noriega, who is now deceased. But he was captured by the American authorities, and he was brought to justice. We had Ronald Reagan, 1983. He had an operation in Grenada, Operation Urgent Fury. Mexico, and even Venezuela back in 1902 and 1903. We had countries such as Britain, Germany, and Italy. They had a blockade of Venezuela, and President Roosevelt put a stop to that. So it's happened, and even in Costa Rica. So there is a lot of examples, ladies and gentlemen, of America intervening in its best interest, taking care of its neighbors. I realize a lot of us just want peace, and we all love peace. Who doesn't love peace, right? But if you look back at history, every time America has practiced this isolationism, America has ended up in some type of war or something worse. It's really just that simple. World War I, very similar to that. Definitely World War II, we just kept holding back. We just did not want to enter the war until Pearl Harbor, in which we did enter World War II, of course. So I think President Trump is really, really doing something very special. And if you notice, he's learned lessons from even the Iraq war. In Iraq, we went in there, we destroyed the entire government, we dismantled the military, and that, of course, turned out to be a mistake. What President Trump is doing is exactly the way it needs to be done. You remove the head of the snake, so to speak, and then the next person that comes along, you still have that infrastructure ready to go. You still have the same police, the same army. I realize it's not a perfect scenario. However, if the leader that's currently in power chooses not to play ball with the United States, it's a real simple solution, ladies and gentlemen. That unfortunate woman is going to be sitting at her desk one day, and an American missile is going to come boom right through the window. And then there's going to be another person that takes her spot. It's really just that simple. And with America naval power, we can blockade that country in perpetuity, and it will bring it to its knees. I mean, it's really just that simple. It's not something that has to be overthought one iota. So let's go and take a quick peek together on this story. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I would definitely love to answer any questions that you may have. So we're going to read through this real quick here. Toppled Venezuelan despot Nicolas Maduro declares himself a decent man, claims he was kidnapped by U.S. forces as he pleads not guilty in New York City. We all think of him as a decent man, right? I mean, that's the first thing that comes to my mind with with Nicolas Maduro. By the way, if you don't know what a despot is just basically a strong man, an authoritative leader, and generally it has a negative connotation, like they're an evil strong man. So just FYI. All right. Toppled. We don't want to see him topless, right? Toppled, ruthless Venezuelan despot and accused narco terrorist Nicolas Maduro defiantly claimed Monday he was kidnapped. Of course, that's what he's going to claim, while making his historic first appearance in change in a Manhattan court, declaring, "I am an innocent man." The 63-year-old deposed dictator, his legs shackled and wearing blue and orange prison garb, entered the courtroom flanked by U.S. Marshals after his extraordinary made-for-Hollywood U.S. capture Saturday. They're going to be talking about that capture for years and years. I can assure you that. It's just amazing what happened and the way it went down. And it was a surprise, absolute surprise. Here's a picture of our friend right there getting off the airplane, and that's his wife right behind him. Both of them in prison garb, being transported to Manhattan Courthouse Monday, January 5th, 2026. The ousted South American president, acting as if he still commanded power on the world stage, pronounced Happy New Year in English to reporters packed into the jury box for space. Then, again, to those in the gallery before greeting his lawyers and taking seats. Maduro then almost immediately interrupted his appearance with the proclamation of his innocence when the 92-year-old federal judge Hellerstein asked him to confirm his identity. Yet, it's kind of remarkable. This judge is 92 years old. "I am the president of the Republic of Venezuela. I am here kidnapped. I was captured at my home in Caracas, Venezuela." The suspect, wearing black headphones for his translation feed, proclaimed in Spanish before the judge stopped him. Hellerstein shot back, "Let me interfere. There will be a time and a place to get into all of this." There's another picture of Maduro being led away with armed security. I'm certain most of these people are members of the DEA and or the military. The caption says, "Nicolas Maduro pleaded not guilty to federal charges." He goes on, "Your counsel will be able to make motions. At this time, I want to know one thing. Are you Nicolas Maduro Morez?" the judge asked. The ousted dictator replied, "I am Nicolas Maduro Morez." The judge, an appointee of former President Bill Clinton, so this is a Democratic presidential appointee. I don't think that's really going to matter in this particular case, but he was appointed by President Bill Clinton, then informed Maduro of his rights, including that he didn't have to speak, and if he can, and that he can have a court-appointed lawyer if he can't afford a private one. In court, Maduro was represented with a top-notch legal eye, Barry Polak, actually, P-O-L-A-C-K, who famously negotiated the release of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange in 2024 and is helping to rep the beleaguered Venezuelan. So he's got a top-notch defense attorney already. This is the guy involved with that WikiLeaks case. Maduro, when asked by Hellerstein if he was aware of his rights, responded, "I did not know of these rights. I'm just guessing here, folks, but I'm imagining in Venezuela, defendants don't have the same type of rights." Interesting thing about this photo, I did not completely realize this when I first saw this photo. Maduro is actually blindfolded in this particular photo. I just thought that was interesting. When I first looked at it, I was thinking, well, maybe he just has sunglasses on or something. but he is definitely blindfolded, and President Trump posted this picture originally on his Truth social feed. Your Honor is informing me of them now, said the despised leader, infamous for brutally torturing and imprisoning political foes and routinely rigging elections in his favor. The judge then formally arraigned Maduro on the charges against him, including a range of narco-terrorism, drugs and weapons, offenses that could carry the death penalty. Mr. Maduro is charged in count one with narco-terrorism conspiracy, specifically that from 1999 to 2025, he knowingly conspired with others and intentionally provided something of value to persons or organizations engaged in terrorism or terroristic activity. That's what the judge said from the bench. Maduro, clad in prison-issued orange shoes, beige pants, and orange shirt with his hands left unshackled, was then asked how he pleaded, and he spouted out, "I am innocent." There he is in this photo, giving a thumbs up. Well, we'll see how that works out for you, my friend. Well, I wouldn't be looking forward to a very prosperous future, if you know what I mean. He continues, "I am not guilty. I am a decent man. I am president of my country. I am still president of my country," he insisted. He furiously scribbled notes on a yellow legal pad during the proceedings while continuing to denounce the indictment against him. "I am not guilty of anything that is mentioned here," he said. Maduro asked at one point if his notes, he asked that his notes be respected and that he be entitled to keep them, an unusual request Hellerstein agreed to without hesitation. Oh, well, keep your notes, pal, right? One of the most bizarre moments in the proceedings occurred when Maduro was proclaiming that he was innocent, and a Venezuelan detractor yelled from the gallery, "Jamás," and that means in English the word never. So the guy yelled never from the stands. But it is pronounced like Hamas in English, also the name of the Palestine terror organization. I guess that would be kind of odd. You're in a courtroom and someone yells out something that sounds like Hamas. I imagine that did get some people to kind of turn around and take notice. The judge jarred more than one courtgoer, observers said. It jarred more than one courtgoer. Yeah, I'm sure it did. It sounded like somebody might be up to some type of terrorism at that point. I don't know. Look at all these goofs here. So you got some supporting Maduro and some wishing him goodbye. They're elated. Yeah, here's these people here. Free President Maduro. The reports that I have seen, folks, almost all point to the clear fact that this guy, these people have to have somebody paying them. These are paid actors, if you will, or paid protesters outside the courthouse. The noisy onlooker, who identified himself as 33-year-old Pedro Rojas, later stood up as Maduro was leaving court and further heckled him as the guy walked by in Spanish, calling him an illegitimate president who will now face real justice. Amen. Maduro turned and faced him and said, "I am a man of God. I am a prisoner of war." And he was let out of the courtroom. His wife, Cecilia Flores, 69, also faces a rash of charges. And by the way, his wife is not what you would call just an innocent spouse. She was the personal attorney for Chavez when Chavez came to power. I think it was 1999. So she is very much so involved in the crimes that Maduro has committed and the injustices against the Venezuelan people. So make no mistake about it, she's in on it. And Maduro was handpicked by Chavez. So when Chavez passed, you had Maduro come to power. She also faces a rash of charges, and she entered the courtroom along with her husband in a similar set of jail-issued clothing for her arraignment at the same time. The pair had been whisked by a dysphoria-looking armored Bearcat vehicles from the notorious Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn hours earlier to a helicopter pad in the borough. That'd be a terrible place to get locked up. If you get locked up, you don't want to visit or be locked up in the Metropolitan Detention Center. That's where they had P. Diddy locked up. You had, I think Epstein was there. At least initially, basically anybody you hear about in the Southern District of New York facing some type of federal charges, that is where they are held. So that's not a good place to be. It is notorious, and it has a lot of rumors about it, and everybody hates it. So I guess when you get right down to it, jail's not supposed to be comfortable, but that place is definitely not somewhere that you want to go, right? They were flown to a landing site on Wall Street in Manhattan and brought by Bearcat to a federal court in ultra-tight security involving machine gun-clad law enforcement as authorities ensured the protection while also making sure they remained in custody. The couple had each of their handcuffs removed before they got to the courtroom, and it just goes in describing how they keep talking about they were abducted and their conversations with the judge, and she had a private lawyer. Apparently, the guy's name is Mark Donnelly, and he emphasized that she was abducted from Venezuela. Says Flores, asked by the judge to identify herself at the hearing, said, "I am the First Lady of the Republic of Venezuela." She told the judge she is completely innocent when quizzed about her plea. Polak, who also questioned the legality of Maduro's capture, said that although the toppled Venezuelan strongman was not seeking immediate release, he may submit a bail application at a later date. Yeah, good luck with that, right? I can't see that. I can't see that happening where he gets out on bail, but you never know. Stay tuned, folks. We'll figure it out. Hellerstein has previously ruled against President Trump and his administration in unrelated cases. For example, he twice rejected overtures to move a case involving alleged hush money payments to Trump's reputed one-time mistress, adult film star Stormy Daniels, to federal court. The judge also issued an order in May blocking the administration from using the Alien Enemies Act as grounds for deporting illegal migrants. Let's just hope that these Democratic judges can do what's right. Let's just let it go with that. Let's hope that they don't allow their hate of Trump to influence the course of justice. We'll just let it go with that. Stay tuned. We'll see how it works out. So over 100 protesters were out in the forest outside the courthouse before Monday's proceedings began, including lefty pro-Maduro demonstrators and a slightly larger group of Venezuelan and Cubans cheering his arrest. The NYPD separated the groups by corralling them with metal barricades. Today we are here happy because he is going to face justice, Venezuelan American Rafael Escalante said of Maduro. But we are also making sure that the history of Venezuela is told by Venezuela, not a group of paid activists that make a career out of standing up for dictators. Other anti-Maduro demonstrators lambasted the Americans who are pushing for his release. And you got more photos here. You see the Maduro and his wife, I guess, in this Bearcat vehicle here. And you have other soldiers, I'm assuming, or DE agents at a minimum, just ahead of him, keeping an eye on things. A broken woman at the clash had demonstrated the notion, or had dismissed the notion of Venezuelans celebrating his capture as propaganda. This particular woman was born in Cuba and came out to celebrate Maduro's capture. So you got a lot of people cussing back and forth, a lot of people yelling back and forth. And at the conclusion here, it letting us know that Maduro is back in court, is due back in court March 17th. How about that, huh? March 17th. So he's going to have a nice couple months in jail before he gets back in front of a judge. And I'm just guessing he's not going to enjoy his time he has in jail there. I can just only imagine this is going to be quite a different scenario for him, right? Okay, so it is what it is. Briefly, I want to take a peek at this with me. These are a few things I wrote down as to why I think what President Trump just did is going to be so historic for not just America, but for the entire world. We're just going to run through these quickly. I put just kind of listed them out here. Freedom restored to a historically democratic nation. Remember, unlike Iraq and these other countries that we have been in, Iraq does not and did not ever have a tradition of being a thriving democracy. On the other hand, Venezuela has been a thriving democracy for many years prior to Hugo Chavez. This is going to be a correction of stolen American asset oils. Back in 99, when Chavez took over, he nationalized all the oil wells. And what that means, folks, is a nice way of saying he stole all of the oil that was under contract with American firms. The American firms paid for these leases, paid for this oil, whatever, and they were a victim of a crime. The oil was stolen, aka nationalized by the Venezuelan government at that time. And make no mistake about it, it sounds like, oh, well, the oil companies got ripped off. Well, they did. But at the end of the day, it's the taxpayers, it's you, it's me, that ends up holding those bills and pays as a result of the actions of Chavez and his cronies. All right, number 2, correction of stolen American oil assets. 3, massive economic prosperity for Venezuela. That's pretty well a given. There's going to be a lot of more economic security in Venezuela. We're going to have a lot more energy production, folks. Venezuela has roughly 20% of the proven reserves in all of the world. Can you imagine that? Venezuela is sitting on more oil than Saudi Arabia. A lot of people don't know that, but I found that to be an interesting fact. In addition to that, Venezuela, my understanding is they have a lot of rare earth minerals, and they have a ton of gold and other minerals. It's just a very richly blessed nation. They have a lot of natural resources, period. Also, this should reverse migration. You're going to have a lot of folks that lived in Venezuela, came to America because they were desperate. They were under persecution by the government. If they choose, they can now voluntarily return to their homeland in Venezuela. We're going to have stronger border security as a result of this. Wars prevented before they start. Venezuela was looking, under the Maduro regimes, they were looking next door at Ghana, I believe. Ghana has a ton of oil, at least they suspect a ton of oil right there, and they were considering invading their neighbor under some type of pretext because they wanted to steal the oil offshore and on land. Here's one of the biggest things that I think is going to happen, and that is Cuba. You have a real possibility that Cuba might fall. The United States has been trying to get rid of the communist regime in Cuba for many, many years, folks, since the 1960s. And finally, it might actually fall under President Trump because of this action in Venezuela. They are hanging on by threads right now. And when we cut the discounted oil from going to Cuba, boom, it's just going to put more and more stress on a government that's already barely hanging on. It could also have a positive effect on countries like Nicaragua and just the general, let's just call them bad actors in that area, specifically Colombia being put on notice. I know the president there is screaming and talking trash. We'll see how that works out for them. Number 11 is one of my biggest points and one of the biggest reasons that it aggravates me we allowed this to go on so long. Now Venezuela is not going to be allowed to be a launching pad for America's enemies, specifically Hamas, Iran, Russia, and China. I cannot confirm it, but I've heard reports and read reports that Hamas has a base there, that they actually have a factory for making drones for Iran and Hamas in that particular area. I know that there was a meeting with Chinese, what are they called? Chinese government representatives that were there meeting with Maduro the day he was captured. Personally, too, that's another thing you don't hear much on the news. I think that was one of the last straws, if you will, that went into President Trump's decision to go ahead and take out Maduro one way or the other. And that is you had individuals, representatives from the Chinese government that were there meeting with Maduro. And I believe, again, I cannot find this reported anywhere in the mainstream news. I believe they agreed to like 600 different areas of cooperation that same day. Can you imagine that? 600? I mean, you're lucky if you have 2 or 3 things people agree on when they meet. But clearly, he was trying to draw closer and closer and, frankly, embed himself with America's enemies. And we can't allow that. Venezuela is way too close to where I live here in Florida, among other things. The drones that they are manufacturing, at least the drones that's over in the Russia-Iraq situation, could easily reach Florida, parts of Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, maybe even parts of Georgia. So, folks, it was a long time in coming that President Trump, frankly, had the balls to do what needed to be done, and I thank God for that. Just straight up. Strategic energy leverage over China. This is another big one. China was getting 30% reduction on oil with what they call a shadow fleet. It was illegal for them to sell this oil on the open market according to international law. It's illegal for China to buy it, but they were buying it at a substantial discount. And when you get a discount on oil, your country has an unfair advantage, and they have extra money. The Communist Party in China has extra money, extra resources to basically prepare to invade Taiwan, which means we end up in a war with China, which would not be a good thing, folks, to put it bluntly. So that's another thing. It reduces the risk of a war in Taiwan. Amen to that. It even gives the U.S. a stronger position in the Russia-Ukraine war, because make no mistake about it, Vladimir Putin understands that President Trump is not a Joe Biden. He's a man that's going to say exactly what he means, and there's going to be consequences if you don't follow through when it comes to President Trump. It's really just that simple. It's peace through strength, not apologies. Credibility in America has been restored, where you're going to have a safer hemisphere and a safer America as a result. And as we talked about, this Monroe Doctrine that started back, I believe it was 1823 under President Monroe, telling Europe at the time, hey, don't come over here anymore trying to conquer lands or steal gold or conquer something for the king or the queen. It doesn't matter. This is America's territory. Stay out. And that's what the Monroe Doctrine did. And now I say we have the Trump Doctrine. The Trump Doctrine says what you see on your screen. It enforces hemispheric boundaries. It denies adversaries proximity to the United States. It allows us to act decisively, and it prevents wars before they start. Amen, right? It's not empire building is my point here. It is simply self-preservation. It's something America has done throughout its history, and finally American leadership is restored. Amen to all that, right? I mean, how can that be wrong? I mean, it's just a fantastic time in American history right now, and we can thank that all to President Donald Trump, our American military, the men and women that make all of this possible. But folks, make no mistake, it starts at the top with a strong, decisive leader like we have in President Donald Trump. And all I can say is, please make sure that you pray for President Trump and that you pray for his administration, and hope that they have the wisdom they need to make the proper good choices to make sure that we're all okay, that the whole world can avoid war and live in peace. I mean, it's really just that simple. So there's no particular questions. My closing remarks are as follows. What you're watching unfold isn't chaos, it's accountability. When tyrants keep screaming, I was watching it just before this program on the news, talking heads over here, talking about, hey, this is a kidnapping. It's illegal. We weren't consulted. They're having a meltdown in the courthouses. When they suddenly discover outrage over sovereignty for some reason, these people are just crazy. Some of these people are just flat evil, if you want to know the honest truth about it, the way I see it. That tells you everything you need to know. Their shields are gone. Their excuses are gone. And the world just got a little bit safer because America, under President Trump, remembered how to lead, how to govern, how to protect the United States and, by extension, the world. And you don't have to agree with me, but you do have to admit this. Weakness never brought about peace. Strength does. Consequences do. And thanks to President Donald Trump and our great military, America has showed both as a result of this. It's really Just that simple. Let me know if you agree or disagree with me, ladies and gentlemen. I truly want to know. Make sure you put in the comments below. If you haven't done so already, please hit the thumbs up button. Be sure to hit subscribe so you know when I put out another video or I go live. Either way, I definitely appreciate you joining me here today. So without any further ado, I'm going to tell you thank you for being here. Always like to say, keep that mind free. Never give up, my friends. And until next time, I am J.R. Dukes.